Alright, I'm back. So I just finished my 30-minute video. This one was about like 34 minutes. And I will give the link at the end of the video. And it is by one of my favorite preachers. I know there's no favoritism with God. But I will consider him like top of the top. So I can just always listen to him. And he's a pastor that pastored me when I was living in Illinois for a little bit, and I think he's great. I think he's anointed. I think God's going to use him even more in the future. Even more. Like, I don't even think we both can comprehend what God's going to do. That's just my take. It is Pastor Adam Bagwell, and he gives a sermon or a teaching on Ephesians chapter 1, and it is great. He starts off with, as verse 1, Paul, an apostle of Christ Jesus, by the will of God. So it is the will of God that Paul became an apostle. Ephesians 1 might be considered by theologians the most powerful chapter in the New Testament. Some say Romans 8. Also, Ephesians is the book that is on the Alps. It takes a high look on what Jesus did for us, and it connects heavenly principles to us. It's pretty cool. Saint means to be set apart, holy. Grace and peace are linked together a lot with what Paul says. It's not who you are, but what you are in. Greater is he who is in me than he who is in the world, right? Jesus Christ. And we should strive to be all what God has called us to be. No government can overthrow God. Therefore, we shouldn't be afraid of no government. Chosen, holy, adopted through Jesus. And according to Pastor, the story of Superman is actually, they stole from Jesus, which I kind of believe too. Which Dr. Frank Turek, you want to look on some of his videos, he gives descriptions on how Hollywood steals these stories from the Bible, and these superheroes, right? But yeah, that is what I got in my notes. I'm in the blue, June 16th, 2022. And we're going to continue where we left off. Hopefully this video does not cut out. My video earlier has not uploaded with starting this book of Ezekiel, so I'm going to have to upload it again. But if it uploads during this time, it's going to cut out the video, because that's what happened last time, and then I got mad. Anyways, let's continue. Let's go. Let's do it. Ezekiel, reading out the NIV translation, chapter 26, a prophecy against Tyre. Verse 1, in the 11th month of the 12th year, on the first day of the month, the word of the Lord came to me, Son of man, because Tyre has said of Jerusalem, Aha! The gate to the nations is broken, and its doors have swung open to me. Now that she lies in ruins, I will prosper. Therefore, this is what the sovereign Lord says, I am against you. Tyre and I will bring many nations against you, like the sea casting up its waves. They will destroy the walls of Tyre and pull down her towers. I will scrape away her rubble and make her a bare rock. Verse 5. Out in the sea she will become a place to spread fish nets. For I have spoken, declares the sovereign Lord. She will become plunder for the nations, and her settlements on the mainland will be ravaged by the sword. Then they will know that I am the Lord. For this is what the sovereign Lord says, from the north I am going to bring against Tyre Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, king of kings, with horses and chariots, with horsemen and a great army. He will ravage your settlements on the mainland with the sword. He will set up siege works against you, build a ramp up to your walls, and raise the shields against you. He will direct the blows of the battering rams against your walls and demolish your towers with his weapons. Verse 10, his horses will be so many that they will cover you with dust. Your walls will tremble at the noise of the war horses. wagons and chariots when he enters your gates, as men enter a city whose walls have been broken through. The hooves of his horses will trample all your streets. He will kill your people with the sword, and your strong pillars will fall to the ground. They will plunder your wealth and loot your merchandise. They will break down your walls and demolish your fine houses and throw your stones, timber and rubble into the sea. I will put an end to your noisy songs, and the music of your harps will be heard no more. I will make you a bare rock, and you will become a place to spread fish nets. You will never be rebuilt, for I, the Lord, have spoken, declares the sovereign Lord. Verse 15. This is what the sovereign Lord says to Tyre. Will not the coastlands tremble at the sound of your fall? When the wounded groan, and the slaughter takes place in you? Then all the princes of the coast will step down from their thrones and lay aside their robes and take off their embroidered garments, clothed with terror. They will sit on the ground, trembling every moment, appalled at you. Then they will take up a lament concerning you and say to you, how you are destroyed, city of renown, people by men of the sea. You are a power on the seas, you and your citizens. You put your terror on all who live there. Now the coastlands tremble on the day of your fall. The islands in the sea are terrified at your collapse. This is what the sovereign Lord says. When I make you a desolate city, like cities no longer inhabited, and when I bring the ocean depths over you and its vast waters cover you. Verse 20. Then I will bring you down with those who go down to the pit, to the people of long ago. I will make you dwell on the earth below, as in ancient ruins, with those who go down to the pit, and you will not return to take your place in the land of the living. I will bring you to a horrible end, and you will be no more. You will be sought, but you will never again be found, declares the sovereign Lord. That completes chapter 26. Chapter 27. A lament over Tyre. Verse 1. The word of the Lord came to me. Son of man, take up a lament concerning Tyre. Say to Tyre, situated at the gateway to the sea, merchant of peoples on many coasts, this is what the sovereign Lord says. You say, Tyre, I am perfect in beauty. Your domain was on the high seas. Your builders brought your beauty to perfection. Verse 5. They made all your timbers of juniper from Sinir, Mount Hermon. They take a cedar from Lebanon to make a mast for you, of oaks from Bashan. They made your oars of cypress wood from the coast of Cyprus. They made your deck adorned with ivory. Fine embroidered linen from Egypt was your sail, and served as your banner. Your awnings aware of blue and purple from the coast of Elisha. Men of Sidon and Arvad were your oarsmen. Your skilled men, Tyre, were abroad as your sailors. Veteran craftsmen of Byblos were on board, as shipwrights to caulk your seams. All the ships of the sea and their sailors came alongside to trade for your wares. Verse 10. Men of Persia, Lydia, and Put served as soldiers in your army. They hung their shields and helmets on your walls, bringing you splendor. Men of Arvad and Helek guarded your walls on every side. Men of Gamad were in your towers. They hung their shields around your walls. They brought your beauty to perfection. Tarshish did business with you because of your great wealth of goods. They exchanged silver, iron, tin, and lead for your merchandise. Greece, Tubal, and Meshech did business with you. They traded human beings and articles of bronze for your wares. Men of Beth Togarmah exchanged chariot horses, cavalry horses, and mules for your exchange. Verse 15. The men of Rhodes traded with you, and many coastlands were your customers. They paid you with ivory tusk and ebony. Aram, Syriac Edom, did business with you because of your many products. They exchanged turquoise, purple fabric, embroidered work, fine linen, coral, and rubies for your merchandise. Judah and Israel traded with you. They exchanged wheat from Minnith and confections. The meaning of the Hebrew for this word is uncertain. Honey, olive oil, and balm for your wares. Damascus did business with you because of your many products and great wealth of goods. They offered wine from Helbon, wool from Zahar, and cask of wine from Izal in exchange for your wares. Wrought iron, cassia, and calamus. Verse 20. Dedan traded in saddle blankets with you. Arabia and all the princes of Kedar were your customers. They did business with you in lambs, rams, and goats. The merchants of Sheba and Ramah traded with you. For your merchandise they exchanged the finest of all kinds of spices and precious stones and gold. Speaking of gold, today I sold my chain that I had with me since 2015. I still remember the day I was with Angel Bravo from the Marines, and I think we went to his aunt's house near LA, somewhere around there, and we took his car. I think it was he drove, and we spent the night there. We had a great time, and we went to the mall, and I bought that chain, and I had that chain to Japan. I mean, it was everywhere with me, and I sold it for $140. That's that. Haran, Caneh, and Eden are merchants of Sheba. Ashur and Kilmad traded with you. In your marketplace they traded with you beautiful garments, blue fabric, embroidered work, and multicolored rugs with cords twisted and tightly knotted. Verse 25. The ships of Tarshish serve as carriers for your wares. You are filled with heavy cargo as you sail the sea. Your oarsmen take you out to the high seas, but the east wind will break you to pieces far out at sea. Your wealth, merchandise, and wares, your mariners, sailors, and shipwrights. Marine. Your merchants and all your soldiers and everyone else on board will sink into the heart of the sea. On the day of your shipwreck, the shorelands will quake when your sailors cry out. All who handle the oars will abandon their ships. The mariners and all the sailors will stand on the shore. Verse 30. They will raise their voice and cry bitterly over you. They will sprinkle dust on their heads and roll in ashes. They will shave their heads because of you and will put on sackcloth. They will weep over you with anguish of soul and with bitter mourning. As they wail and mourn over you, they will take up lament concerning you. Who was ever silenced like Tyre, surrounded by the sea? When your merchandise went out on the seas, you satisfied many nations. With your great wealth and your wares, you enriched the kings of the earth. Now you are shattered by the sea in the depths of the waters. Your wares are your company, and all your company have gone down with you. Verse 35. All who live in the coastlands are appalled at you. Their kings shudder with horror, and their faces are distorted with fear. The merchants among the nations scoff at you. You have come to a horrible end, and will be no more. That completes chapter 27. Chapter 28. A prophecy against the king of Tyre. Verse 1. The word of the Lord came to me, Son of man, say to the ruler of Tyre, this is what the sovereign Lord says. In the pride of your heart you say, I am a god. I sit on the throne of a god, in the heart of the seas. But you are a mere mortal, and not a god. Though you think you are as wise as a god, are you wiser than Daniel? Or Daniel, a man of renown in ancient literature. Is no secret hidden from you? By your wisdom and understanding you have gained wealth for yourself and amassed gold and silver in your treasuries. Verse 5. By your great skill in trading you have increased your wealth, and because of your wealth your heart has grown proud. Therefore this is what the sovereign Lord says. Because you think you are wise as a god, I am going to bring foreigners against you, the most ruthless of nations. They will draw their swords against your beauty and wisdom, and pierce your shining splendor. They will bring you down to the pit, and you will die a violent death in the heart of the seas. Will you then say, I am a god, in the presence of those who kill you? You will be but a mortal, not a god, in the hands of those who slay you. Verse 10. You will die the death of the uncircumcised, at the hands of foreigners. I have spoken, declares the sovereign Lord. The word of the Lord came to me, Son of man, take up lament concerning the king of Tyre, and say to him, This is what the sovereign Lord says. You were the seal of perfection, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. You were in Eden, the garden of God. Every precious stone adorned you. Carnelian, chrysolite, and emerald, topaz, onyx, and jasper, lapis lazuli, it's that blue beautiful stone, turquoise, and beryl. The precise identification of some of these precious stones is uncertain. Man, I can only imagine what kind of stones they got. And how they look. It'd be so cool to see. Because who made those stones? God. Who made the elements? God. End of story. Fact. Your settlings and mountings were made of gold. On the day you were created, they were prepared. You were anointed as a guardian cherub, for so I had ordained you. You were on the holy mount of God. You walked among the fiery stones. You were blameless in your ways from the day you were created, till wickedness was found in you. Through your widespread trade you were filled with violence, and you sinned. So I drove you in disgrace from the mount of God, and I expelled you, guardian cherub, from among the fiery stones. Your heart became proud on account of your beauty, and you corrupted your wisdom because of your splendor. So I threw you to the earth. I made a spectacle of you before kings. By your many sins and dishonest trade you have desecrated your sanctuaries. So I made a fire come out from you, and it consumed you. And I reduced you to ashes on the ground, in the sight of all who were watching. All the nations who knew you are appalled to you. You have come to a horrible end, and will be no more. A prophecy against Sidon. Verse 20. The word of the Lord came to me. Son of man, set your face against Sidon. Prophesy against her, and say, This is what the sovereign Lord says. I am against you, Sidon, and among you I will display my glory. You will know that I am the Lord, when I inflict punishment on you, and within you am proved to be holy. I will send a plague upon you, and make blood flow in your streets. The slain will fall within you, with the sword against you on every side. Then you will know that I am the Lord. No longer will the people of Israel have malicious neighbors who are painful briars and sharp thorns. Then they will know that I am the sovereign Lord. Verse 25. This is what the sovereign Lord says. When I gather the people of Israel from the nations where they have been scattered, I will prove holy through them in the sight of the nations. Then they will live in their own land, which I gave to my servant Jacob. They will live there in safety, and will build houses and plant vineyards. They will live in safety when I inflict punishment on all their neighbors who malign them. Then they will know that I am the Lord, their God. That completes chapter 28. Chapter 29. A prophecy against Egypt. Judgment on Pharaoh. Verse 1. In the 10th year, in the 10th month, on the 12th day, the word of the Lord came to me. Son of man, set your face against Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and prophesy against him and against all Egypt. Speak to him and say, This is what the sovereign Lord says. Pharaoh is still alive? I wonder what the time period is of all this. I am against you, Pharaoh, king of Egypt, you great monster lying among your streams. You say the Nile belongs to me. I made it for myself. But I will put hooks in your jaws, and make the fish of your streams stick to your scales. I will pull you out from among your streams, with all the fish sticking to your scales. Verse 5. I will leave you in the desert, you and all the fish of your streams. You will fall in the open field, and not be gathered or picked up. I will give you as food to the beasts of the earth and the birds of the sky. Then all who live in Egypt will know that I am the Lord. You have been a staff of reed for the people of Israel. When they grasped you with their hands, you splintered and you tore open their shoulders. When they leaned on you, you broke, and their backs were wrenched. Therefore, this is what the sovereign Lord says. I will bring a sword against you and kill both man and beast. Egypt will become a desolate wasteland. Then they will know that I am the Lord. Because you said the Nile was mine, I made it. Verse 10. Therefore I am against you and against your streams. And I will make the land of Egypt a ruin and a desolate waste, from Migdol to Aswan, as far as the border of Cush. Cush is the upper Nile region. Again, I'm looking in the small footnotes. They have a letter A. Look at the footnotes. A gives you some more insight. Verse 11, the foot of neither man nor beast will pass through it, nor will it live there for 40 years. I will make the land of Egypt desolate among devastated lands, and her cities will lie desolate 40 years among ruined cities. And I will disperse the Egyptians among the nations and scatter them through the countries. Yet this is what the sovereign Lord says, at the end of 40 years I will gather the Egyptians from the nations where they were scattered. I will bring them back from captivity and return them to Upper Egypt, the land of their ancestry. There they will be a lowly kingdom. Verse 15. It will be the lowliest of kingdoms and will never again exalt itself above the other nations. I will make it so weak that it will never again rule over the nations. Egypt will no longer be a source of confidence for the people of Israel, but will be a reminder of their sin in knowing and turning to her for help. Then they will know that I am the sovereign Lord. Nebuchadnezzar's reward. Verse 17, in the 27th year, in the first month of the first day, the word of the Lord came to me. Son of man, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, drove his army in a hard campaign against Tyre. Every head was rubbed bare, and every shoulder made raw. Yet he and his army got no reward from the campaign he led against Tyre. Therefore, this is what the sovereign Lord says. I am going to give Egypt to Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, and he will carry off its wealth. He will loot and plunder the land as pay for his army. Verse 20. I have given him Egypt as a reward for his efforts, because he and his army did it for me, declares the sovereign Lord. On that day I will make a horn. Horn here symbolizes strength. On that day I will make a horn grow for the Israelites, and I will open your mouth among them. Then they will know that I am the Lord. And that completes chapter 29. Chapter 30, a lament over Egypt. Verse 1, the word of the Lord came to me, son of man, prophesy and say, this is what the sovereign Lord says. Wail and say, alas for that day, for the day is near, the day of the Lord is near, a day of clouds, a time of doom for the nations. A sword will come against Egypt, and anguish will come upon Cush. When the slain fall in Egypt, her wealth will be carried away, and her foundations torn apart. Verse 5, Cush and Lydia, and all Arabia, Cud and the people of the covenant, land will fall by the sword along with Egypt. This is what the Lord says. The allies of Egypt will fall, and her proud strength will fail. From Migdol to Aswan, they will fall by the sword within her, declares the sovereign Lord. They will be desolate among desolate lands, and their cities will lie among ruined cities. Then they will know that I am the Lord, when I set fire to Egypt, and all her helpers are crushed. On that day messengers will go out from me in ships to frighten Cush out of her complacency. Anguish will take hold of them on the day of Egypt's doom, for it is sure to come. Verse 10, this is what the sovereign Lord says. I will put an end to the hordes of Egypt by the hand of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon. He and his army, the most ruthless of nations, will be brought in to destroy the land. They will draw their swords against Egypt, and will fill the land with the slain. I will dry up the waters of the Nile, and sell the land to an evil nation. By the hand of foreigners I will lay waste the land and everything in it. I, the Lord, have spoken. This is what the sovereign Lord says. I will destroy the idols and put an end to the images in Memphis. No longer will there be a prince in Egypt, and I will spread fear throughout the land. I will lay waste Upper Egypt, set fire to Zoan, and inflict punishment on Thebes. Verse 15, I will pour out my wrath on Pelusium, the stronghold of Egypt, and wipe out the hordes of Thebes. I will set fire to Egypt. Pelusium will writhe in agony. Thebes will be taken by storm. Memphis will be in constant distress. The young men of Heliopolis and Bubastis will fall by the sword, and the cities themselves will go into captivity. Man, just think about it now. I think Disney has stolen a lot of stuff from the Bible, man, because it's like, You know, if you listen to Hercules, I just gotta say this. If you watch the movie Hercules, the Disney one, and you listen to their song, um, they say that's the gospel truth. Like that. That's blasphemy. That's a straight lie from the pit of hell. That's not the gospel truth. They're talking nothing about Jesus, but rather Greek mythology. And I'm thinking about like Snow White and about the stones and all those stones and stuff. I don't know, just getting all this revelation, I feel. Alright. And the cities themselves will go into captivity. Verse 18. Dark will be the day at Taphanes when I break the yoke of Egypt. There her proud strength will come to an end. She will be covered with clouds, and her villages will go into captivity. So I will inflict punishment on Egypt, and they will know that I am the Lord. Pharaoh's arms are broken. Verse 20. In the 11th year, in the first month, on the 7th day, the word of the Lord came to me. Son of man, I have broken the arm of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. It has not been bound up to be healed or put in a splint so that it may become strong enough to hold a sword. Therefore, this is what the sovereign Lord says. I am against Pharaoh, king of Egypt. I will break both his arms, the good arm as well as the broken one, and make the sword fall from his hand. I will disperse the Egyptians among the nations and scatter them through the countries. I will strengthen the arms of the king of Babylon and put my sword in his hand. But I will break the arms of Pharaoh, and he will groan before him like a mortally wounded man. Verse 25. I will strengthen the arms of the king of Babylon, but the arms of Pharaoh will fall limp. Then they will know that I am the Lord. When I put my sword into the hand of the king of Babylon, and he brandishes it against Egypt, I will disperse the Egyptians among the nations and scatter them through the countries. Then they will know that I am the Lord. That completes chapter 30. I think there's like 30-some chapters in Ezekiel, right? Yep. Oh, so quick break. Oh. My water's back there. Whatever. Chapter 31. Pharaoh as a felled cedar of Lebanon. Verse 1. In the 11th year, in the 3rd month of the 1st day, the word of the Lord came to me. Son of man, say to Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and to his hordes, who can be compared with you in majesty? Consider Assyria, once a cedar in Lebanon, with beautiful branches, overshadowing the forest. It towered on high, its top above the thick foliage. The waters nourished it, deep springs made it grow tall. Their streams flowed all around its base and sent their channels to all the trees of the field. Verse 5. So it towered higher than all the trees of the field. Its boughs increased, and its branches grew long, spreading because of abundant waters. All the birds of the sky nested in its boughs. All the animals of the wild gave birth under its branches. All the great nations lived in its shade. It was majestic in beauty, with its spreading boughs, for its roots went down to abundant waters. The cedars in the garden of God could not rival it, nor could the junipers equal its boughs, nor could the plane trees compare with its branches. No tree in the garden of God could match its beauty. I made it beautiful with abundant branches, the envy of all the trees of Eden in the garden of God. Wow. Verse 10. Therefore, this is what the sovereign Lord says. Because the great cedar towered over the thick foliage, and because it was proud of its height, I gave it into the hands of the ruler of the nations, for him to deal with according to its wickedness. I cast it aside, and the most ruthless of foreign nations cut it down and left it. Its boughs fell in the mountains and in all the valleys. Its branches lay broken in all the ravines of the land. All the nations of the earth came out from under its shade and left it. All the birds settled on the fallen tree, and all the wild animals lived among its branches. Therefore no other trees by the waters are ever to tower proudly on high, lifting their tops above the thick foliage. No other trees so well watered are ever to reach such a height. They are all destined for death. For the earth below among mortals who go down to the realm of the dead. Verse 15. This is what the sovereign Lord says. On the day it was brought down to the realm of the dead, I covered the deep springs with mourning for it. I held back its streams, and its abundant waters were restrained. Because of it I clothed Lebanon with gloom, and all the trees of the field withered away. I made the nations tremble at the sound of its fall, when I brought it down to the realm of the dead to be with those who go down to the pit. Then all the trees of Eden, the choicest and best of Lebanon, the well-watered trees, were consoled in the earth below. They too, like the great cedar, had gone down to the realm of the dead, to those killed by the sword, along with the armed men who lived in its shade among the nations. Which of the trees of Eden can be compared with you in splendor and majesty? Yet you, too, will be brought down with the trees of Eden to the earth below. You will lie among the uncircumcised, with those killed by the sword. This is Pharaoh and all his hordes, declares the sovereign Lord. That completes chapter 31. Chapter 32. A lament over Pharaoh. Verse 1. In the 12th year, in the 12th month, on the first day, the word of the Lord came to me, Son of man, take up a lament concerning Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and say to him, You are like a lion among the nations, you are like a monster in the seas, thrashing about in your streams, churning the water with your feet, and muddying the streams. This is what the sovereign Lord says, With a great throng of people I will cast my net over you, and they will haul you up in my net. I will throw you on the land, and hurl you on the open field. I will let all the birds of the sky settle on you, and all the animals of the wild gorge themselves on you. Verse 5. I will spread your flesh on the mountains, and fill the valleys with your remains. I will drench the land with your flowing blood all the way to the mountains, and the ravines will be filled with your flesh. When I snuffed you out, I will cover the heavens, and darken their stars. I will cover the sun with a cloud, and the moon will not give its light. And the shining lights in the heavens I will darken over you. I will bring darkness over your land, declares the sovereign Lord. I will trouble the hearts of many peoples, when I bring about your destruction among the nations, among lands you have not known. Verse 10. I will cause many peoples to be appalled at you, and their kings will shudder with horror because of you, when I banish my sword before them. On the day of your downfall, each of them will tremble every moment for his life. For this is what the sovereign Lord says, The sword of the king of Babylon will come against you. I will cause your hordes to fall by the swords of mighty men, the most ruthless of all nations. They will shatter the pride of Egypt, and all her hordes will be overthrown. I will destroy all her cattle from beside abundant waters, no longer to be stirred by the foot of man, or muddied by the hoofs of cattle. Then I will let her waters settle, and make her streams flow like oil, declares the sovereign Lord. Verse 15. When I make Egypt desolate, and strip the land of everything in it, when I strike down all who live there, then they will know that I am the Lord. This is the lament they will chant for her. The daughters of the nations will chant it. For Egypt and all her hordes they will chant it, declares the sovereign Lord. Egypt's descent into the realm of the dead. Verse 17. In the 12th year, on the 15th day of the month, the word of the Lord came to me, Son of man, wail for the hordes of Egypt, and consign to the earth below both her and the daughters of mighty nations, along with those who go down to the pit. Say to them, Are you more favored than others? Go down and be laid among the uncircumcised. Verse 20. They will fall among those killed by the sword. The sword is drawn, let her be dragged off with all her hordes. From within the realm of the dead, the mighty leaders will say of Egypt and her allies, They have come down, and they lie with the uncircumcised, with those killed by the sword. Assyria is there with her whole army. She is surrounded by the graves of all her slain, all who have fallen by the sword. Their graves are in the depths of the pit, and her army lies around her grave. All who had spread terror in the land of the living are slain, fallen by the sword. Elam is there, with all her hordes around her grave. All of them are slain, fallen by the sword. All who had spread terror in the land of the living went down uncircumcised to the earth below. They bear their shame with those who go down to the pit. Verse 25. A bed is made for her among the slain, with all her hordes around her grave. All of them are uncircumcised, killed by the sword, because their terror had spread in the land of the living. They bear their shame with those who go down to the pit. They are laid among the slain. Meshech and Tubal are there, with all their hordes around their graves. All of them are uncircumcised, killed by the sword, because they spread their terror in the land of the living. But they do not lie with the fallen warriors of old, Hebrew warriors who were uncircumcised, who went down to the realm of the dead with their weapons of war, their swords placed under their heads and their shields resting on their bones. Though these warriors also had terrorized the land of the living, you too, Pharaoh, will be broken and will lie among the uncircumcised, with those killed by the sword. Edom is there, her kings and all her princes, despite their power. They are laid with those killed by the sword. They lie with the uncircumcised, with those who go down to the pit. Verse 30. All the princes of the north and all the Sidonians are there. They went down with the slain in disgrace, despite the terror caused by their power. They lie uncircumcised with those killed by the sword, and bear their shame with those who go down to the pit. Pharaoh, he and all his army, will set them, and he will be consoled for all his hordes that were killed by the sword, declares the sovereign Lord. Although I had him spread terror in the land of the living, Pharaoh and all his hordes will be laid among the uncircumcised, with those killed by the sword, declares the sovereign Lord. That completes chapter 32. Chapter 33. Renewal of Ezekiel's call as watchman. Verse 1. The word of the Lord came to me, Son of man, speak to your people and say to them, when I bring the sword against the land, and the people of the land, choose one of their men and make him their watchman. And he sees the sword coming against the land, and blows the trumpet to warn the people. Then if anyone hears the trumpet, but does not heed the warning, and the sword comes and takes their life, their blood will be on their own head. Verse 5. Since they heard the sound of the trumpet, but did not heed the warning, their blood will be on their own head. If they had heeded the warning, they would have saved themselves. But if the watchman sees the sword coming and does not blow the trumpet to warn the people, and the sword comes and takes someone's life, that person's life will be taken because of their sin. But I will hold the watchmen accountable for their blood. Son of man, I have made you a watchman for the people of Israel. So hear the word I speak and give them warning from me. When I say to the wicked, you wicked person, you will surely die, and you do not speak out to dissuade them from their ways, that wicked person will die for their sin, and I will hold you accountable for their blood. But if you do warn the wicked person to turn from their ways, and they do not do so, they will die for their sin, though you yourself will be saved. Verse 10. Son of man, say to the Israelites, this is what you are saying. Our offenses and sins weigh us down, and we are wasting away because of them. How then can we live? Say to them, as surely as I live, declares the sovereign Lord, I take no pleasure in the death of the wicked, but rather that they turn from their ways and live. Turn from your evil ways. Why will you die, people of Israel? Therefore, son of man, say to your people, if someone who is righteous disobeys, that person's former righteousness will count for nothing. And if someone who is wicked repents, that person's former wickedness will not bring condemnation. The righteous person who sins will not be allowed to live, even though they were formerly righteous. If I tell a righteous person that they will surely live, but then they trust in their righteousness and do evil, none of the righteous things that person has done will be remembered. They will die for the evil they have done. And if I say to a wicked person, you will surely die, but they then turn away from their sin and do what is just and right. Verse 15. If they give back and what they took in pledge for a loan, return what they have stolen. Follow the decrees that give life, and do no evil. That person will surely live. They will not die. None of the sins that person has committed will be remembered against them. They have done what is right and just. They will surely live. Yet your people say, the way of the Lord is not just, but it is their way that is not just. If a righteous person turns from their righteousness and does evil, they will die for it. And if a wicked person turns away from their wickedness and does what is just and right, they will live by doing so. Verse 20, yet you Israelites say, the watch of the Lord is not just, but I will judge each of you according to your own ways. Jerusalem's fall explained. Verse 21, in the 12th year of our exile, in the 10th month of the 5th day, a man who had escaped from Jerusalem came to me and said, the city has fallen. Now the evening before the man arrived, the hand of the Lord was on me, and he opened my mouth before the man came to me in the morning. So my mouth was opened, and I was no longer silent. Then the word of the Lord came to me, Son of man, the people living in those ruins in the land of Israel are saying, Abraham was only one man, yet he possessed the land. But we are many, surely the land has been given to us as our possession. Verse 25, therefore say to them, this is what the sovereign Lord says, since you eat meat with the blood still in it, and look to your idols, and shed blood, should you then possess the land? You rely on your sword, you do detestable things, and each of you defiles his neighbor's wife. Should you then possess the land? Say this to them, this is what the sovereign Lord says, as surely as I live, those who are left in the ruins will fall by the sword. Those out in the country I will give to the wild animals to be devoured, and those in strongholds and caves will die of a plague. I will make the land a desolate waste, and her proud strength will come to an end, and the mountains of Israel will become desolate so that no one will cross them. Then they will know that I am the Lord, when I have made the land a desolate waste because of all the detestable things they have done. Verse 30. As for you, son of man, your people are talking together about you by the walls and at the doors of the houses, saying to each other, come and hear the message that has come from the Lord. My people come to you, as they usually do, and sit before you to hear your words, but they do not put them into practice. Their mouths speak of love, but their hearts are greedy for unjust gain. Indeed, to them you are nothing more than one who sings love songs with a beautiful voice, and plays an instrument well, for they hear your words, but do not put them into practice. When all this comes true, and it surely will, then they will know that a prophet has been among them. That completes chapter 33. Still recording, yes. Chapter 34. The Lord will be Israel's shepherd. Verse 1. The word of the Lord came to me, Son of man, prophesy against the shepherds of Israel. Prophesy and say to them, this is what the sovereign Lord says. Woe to you, shepherds of Israel, who only take care of yourselves. Should not shepherds take care of the flock? You eat the curds, clothe yourselves with the wool, and slaughter the choice animals, but you did not take care of the flock. You have not strengthened the weak, or healed the sick, or bound up the injured. You have not brought back the strays, or searched for the lost. You have ruled them harshly and brutally. Verse 5. So they were scattered because there was no shepherd. And when they were scattered, they became food for all the wild animals. My sheep wandered over all the mountains and on every high hill. They were scattered over the whole earth. Oh, there's more than 30. Over the whole earth. Oh, almost done. And no one searched or looked for them. Therefore, you shepherds, hear the word of the Lord. As surely as I live, declares the sovereign Lord, because my flock lacks a shepherd, and so has been plundered, and has become food for all the wild animals, and because my shepherds did not search for my flock, but cared for themselves rather than my flock, therefore, you shepherds, hear the word of the Lord. Verse 10. This is what the sovereign Lord says. I am against the shepherds, and will hold them accountable for my flock. I will remove them from tending the flock, so that the shepherds can no longer feed themselves. I will rescue my flock from their mouths, and it will no longer be food for them. For this is what the sovereign Lord says. I myself will search for my sheep and look after them, as a shepherd looks after his scattered flock when he is with them. So I will look after my sheep. I will rescue them from all the places where they were scattered on a day of clouds and darkness. I will bring them out from the nations, and gather them from the countries, and I will bring them into their own land. I will pasture them on the mountains of Israel, in the ravines, and in all the settlements in the land. I will tend them in a good pasture in the mountain heights of Israel, and will be their grazing land. There they will lie down in the good grazing land, and there they will feed in the rich pasture on the mountains of Israel. Verse 15. I myself will tend my sheep, and have them lie down, declares the sovereign Lord. I will search for the lost, and bring back the strays. I I will bind up the injured and strengthen the weak. But the sleek and the strong I will destroy. I will shepherd the flock with justice. As for you, my flock, this is what the sovereign Lord says. I will judge between one sheep and another, and between rams and goats. Is it not enough for you to feed on the good pasture? Must you also trample the rest of your pasture with your feet? Is it not enough for you to drink clear water? Must you also muddy the rest with your feet? Must my flock feed on what you have trampled and drink what you have muddied with your feet? Verse 20. Therefore, this is what the sovereign Lord says to them. See, I myself will judge between the fat sheep and the lean sheep, because you shove with flank and shoulder, butting all the weak sheep with your horns until you have driven them away. I will save my flock, and they will no longer be plundered. I will judge between one sheep and another. I will place over them one shepherd, my servant David, and he will tend them. He will tend them and be their shepherd. I, the Lord, will be their God, and my servant David will be prince among them. I, the Lord, have spoken. Verse 25, I will make a covenant of peace with them and rid the land of savage beasts, so that they may live in the wilderness and live and sleep in the forest in safety. I will make them and the places surrounding my hill a blessing. I will send down showers in season. There will be showers of blessing. The trees will yield their fruit, and the ground will yield its crops. The people will be secure in their land. They will know that I am the Lord, when I break the bars of their yoke and rescue them from the hands of those who enslave them. They will no longer be plundered by the nations, nor will wild animals devour them. They will live in safety, and no one will make them afraid. I will provide for them a land renowned for its crops, and they will no longer be victims of famine, and in the land or bear the scorn of the nations. Verse 30, then they will know that I, the Lord their God, am with them, and that they, the Israelites, are my people, declares the sovereign Lord. You are my sheep, the sheep of my pasture, and I am your God, declares the sovereign Lord. And that completes chapter 34. Chapter 35, a prophecy against Edom. Verse 1, the word of the Lord came to me, Son of man, set your face against Mount Seir, prophesy against it, and say, this is what the sovereign Lord says. I am against you, Mount Seir. Is that Mount Hermon? And it doesn't have a letter. I will stretch out my hand against you and make you a desolate waste. I will turn your towns into ruins, and you will be desolate. Then you will know that I am the Lord. Verse 5, because you harbored an ancient hostility and delivered the Israelites over to the sword at the time of their calamity, the time their punishment reached its climax. Therefore, as surely as I live, declares the sovereign Lord, I will give you over to bloodshed, and it will pursue you. Since you do not hate bloodshed, bloodshed will pursue you. I will make Mount Seir a desolate waste, and cut off from it all who come and go. I will fill your mountains with the slain. Those killed by the sword will fall on your hills and in your valleys and in all your ravines. I will make you desolate forever. Your towns will not be inhabited. Then you will know that I am the Lord. Verse 10, because you have said, these two nations and countries will be ours, and we will take possession of them. Even though I, the Lord, was there, therefore as surely as I live, declares the sovereign Lord, I will treat you in accordance with the anger and jealousy you showed in your hatred of them, and I will make myself known among them when I judge you. Then you will know that I, the Lord, have heard all the contemptible things you have said against the mountains of Israel. You said they have been laid waste and have been given over to us to devour. You boasted against me and spoke against me without restraint, and I heard it. This is what the sovereign Lord says. While the whole earth rejoices, I will make you desolate. Verse 15, because you rejoiced when the inheritance of Israel became desolate. That is how I will treat you. You will be desolate, Mount Seir, you and all of Edom. Then they will know that I am the Lord. That completes chapter 35. I think we're going to do another chapter. Chapter 36, hope for the mountains of Israel. Verse 1. Son of man, prophesy to the mountains of Israel and say, mountains of Israel, hear the word of the Lord. This is what the sovereign Lord says. The enemy said of you, aha, the ancient heights have become our possession. Therefore prophesy and say, this is what the sovereign Lord says. Because they ravaged and crushed you from every side, that you became the possession of the rest of the nations, and the object of people's malicious talk and slander. Therefore, mountains of Israel, hear the word of the sovereign Lord. This is what the sovereign Lord says to the mountains and hills, to the ravines and valleys, to the desolate ruins, and the deserted towns that have been plundered and ridiculed by the rest of the nations around you. Verse 5. This is what the sovereign Lord says. In my burning zeal I have spoken against the rest of the nations and against all Edom. For with glee and with malice in their hearts they made my land their own possession, so that they might plunder its pasture land. Therefore prophesy concerning the land of Israel, and say to the mountains and hills, to the ravines and valleys, this is what the sovereign Lord says. I speak in my jealous wrath, because you have suffered the scorn of the nations. My God's a jealous God. My God's a jealous God. Therefore this is what the sovereign Lord says. I swear with uplifted hand that the nations around you will also suffer scorn. And don't you think God likes time? Your time? This is not to boast, but don't you think God likes this time that I spend with Him in His Word, reading His Word, get to know His Word, getting to know Him? Yes, He does. Because my God's a jealous God. And if you're not spending time with Him, it's like telling your wife, your kids, I love you, and you don't really spend time with them. You don't listen to them. You don't talk to them. It's a lie. But you, mountains of Israel, will produce branches and fruit for my people Israel, for they will soon come home. I am concerned for you, and will look on you with favor, and you will be plowed and sown. Verse 10. I will cause many people to live on you, yes, all of Israel. The towns will be inhabited, and the ruins rebuilt. I will increase the number of people and animals living on you, and they will be fruitful and become numerous. I will settle people on you as in the past, and will make you prosper more than before. Then you will know that I am the Lord. I will cause my people Israel, to live on you. They will possess you, and you will be their inheritance. You will never again deprive them of their children. This is what the sovereign Lord says. Because some say to you, you devour people and deprive your nation of its children. Therefore you will no longer devour people or make your nation childless, declares the sovereign Lord. Verse 15. No longer will I make you hear the taunts of the nations, and no longer will you suffer the scorn of the peoples, or cause your nation to fall, declares the sovereign Lord. Israel's restoration assured. Verse 16. Again the word of the Lord came to me, Son of man, when the people of Israel were living in their own land, they defiled it by their conduct and their actions. Their conduct was like a woman's monthly uncleanness in my sight. So I poured out my wrath on them, because they had shed blood in the land, and because they had defiled it with their idols. I dispersed them among the nations, and they were scattered through the countries. I judged them according to their conduct and their actions. Verse 20. And wherever they went along the nations, they profaned my holy name. For it was said of them, these are the Lord's people, and yet they had to leave His land. I had concern for my holy name, which the people of Israel profaned among the nations where they had gone. Therefore say to the Israelites, this is what the sovereign Lord says. Is it not for your sake, people of Israel, that I am going to do these things, but for the sake of my holy name, which you have profaned among the nations where you have gone? I will show the holiness of my great name, which has been profaned among the nations, the name you have profaned among them. Then the nations will know that I am the Lord, declares the sovereign Lord, when I am proved holy through you before their eyes. For I will take you out of the nations, I will gather you from all the countries, and bring you back into your own land. Verse 25. I will sprinkle clean water on you, and you will be clean. I will cleanse you from all your impurities and from all your idols. I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit in you. I will remove from you your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh. And I will put my spirit in you and move you to follow my decrees and be careful to keep my laws. Then you will live in the land I gave your ancestors. You will be my people, and I will be your God. I will save you from all your uncleanness. I will call for the grain and make it plentiful, and will not bring famine upon you. Verse 30. I will increase the fruit of the trees and the crops of the field, so that you will no longer suffer disgrace among the nations because of famine. Then you will remember your evil ways and wicked deeds, and you will loathe yourselves for your sins and detestable practices. I want you to know that I am not doing this for your sake, declares the sovereign Lord. Be ashamed and disgraced for your conduct, people of Israel. This is what the sovereign Lord says. On the day I cleanse you from all your sins, I will resettle your towns, and the ruins will be rebuilt. The desolate land will be cultivated instead of lying desolate in the sight of all who pass through it. Verse 35, they will say, this land that was laid waste has become like the Garden of Eden. The cities that were lying in ruins, desolate and destroyed, are now fortified and inhabited. Then the nations around you that remain will know that I, the Lord, have rebuilt what was destroyed, and have replanted that was desolate. I, the Lord, have spoken, and I will do it. This is what the sovereign Lord says. Once again I will yield to Israel's plea and do this for them. I will make their people as numerous as sheep, as numerous as the flocks for offerings at Jerusalem during her appointed festivals. So will the ruined cities be filled with flocks of people. Then they will know that I am the Lord. And that completes chapter 36. That's going to complete it. I'm going to stop right there. My other video went a little over an hour. So yeah. Ooh, next chapter we're going to get into the Valley of Dry Bones. And then chapter 38, which we might be living in right now. Prophecy at the end times. Talks about Gog and Magog. Russia, King of Russia. So, alright, that is it. I'm going to watch the Golden State game. Hoping Golden State takes it all right now.